Narayanam Vaspitya
Vanchaivanuttamam
Devam Saraswatim Vyasam
Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, we should first offer respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Vishnu, the supremest human beings, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva Kilapas. Nashta Pressure, let's see, Srimvatam Swakata Krishna,
Srinvatam Sakatha Krishna
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana Kirtana
Vidyantastovya Bhadrani,
Vidhyantastha Bhadrani
Viduno Suritsatam,
Vidunoti Suritsatam
Vidunoti Suritsatam,
Vidunoti Suritsatam.
Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul, in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Ashtapraeshu Bhadreshu
Nashtapraeshu Abhadreshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke
Bhakti Bhavati Nishtiki.
Bhakti Bhavati Nashtiki.
Our regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and our rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of God and his praise in transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. So we have reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's in Canto 1, Chapter 17, entitled Punishment and Reward of Kali. And that's text 3. Gam. So that's Gam.
Gam.
Cha.
Dharma. Dukham. Dinam.
Gam cha dharma dukham dina.
Gam cha dharma dukham dinam.
Vrisham. Shudra. Padahatam. Vrisham Shudra Padahatam.
Disham Shudra Padahatam.
Vivatsam. Ashru. Vadanam. Vivatsam Ashru Vadanam. Shamam. Yavasam. Ichatim. Shamam Yavasam Ichatim. Gam cha dharma dukham dinam. Visham Shudra Padahatam. Vivatsam Ashruvadanam. Shamam Yavasam Ichatim. Gam cha dharma dukham dinam. Vrisham Shudra Padahatam. Vivatsam Ashruvadanam. Shamam Yavasam Ichatim. Gam cha dharma dukham dinam. Vrisham Shudra Padahatam. Vivatsam Ashruvadanam. Shamam Yavasam Ichatim.
Gam cha dharma dukham dinam.
Gam cha dharma dukham dinam.
Vrisham Shudra Padahatam.
Vrisham Shudra Padahatam.
Svadenam
Vivatsamashrubadanam
Asmam Yavasam Ichatim
Shamam Yavasam Ichatim Gam cha dharma dugam dinam Brisham Sudra Padahatam Vivatsamashrubadanam Shamam Yavasam Ichatim Gam cha dharma dugam dinam Brisham Sudra Padahatam Vivatsam Ashruvadanam Shamam Ichatim Gam cha dharma dugam dinam Brisham Sudra Padahatam Vivatsamashruvadanam Shamam Yavasam Ichatim Gam cha dharma dugam dinam Brisham Sudra Padahatam Vivatsamashruvadanam Shamam Yavasam Ichatim
Anybody else wants to try? Okay. Gam,
Gam
the cow.
Cow
Cha,
Cha
also. Dharmadugam,
Dharmadugam
beneficial because one can draw religion from her.
Beneficial because one can draw religion from her.
Dinam,
Dinam
now rendered poor.
Now rendered poor.
Brisham, distressed. Shudra,
Shudra
the lower caste.
the lower caste.
Padaahatam,
Padahatam
beaten on the legs.
beaten on the legs.
Vivatsam,
Vivatsam
without any calf.
without any calf.
Ashubhadanam,
Ashruvadanam
with tears in her eyes.
eyes.
Shamam,
Shamam
very weak. Yavasam, grass. Ichatim,
Ichatim
as if desiring to have some grass to eat.
as if desiring to have some grass to eat.
Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
So I'll read the whole thing, then we'll do parts at a time. Although the cow is beneficial because one can draw religious principles from her, she was now rendered poor and calfless. Her legs were being beaten by a Shudra. There were tears in her eyes, and she was distressed and weak. She was hankering after some grass in the field. Please repeat. Although the cow is beneficial, because one can draw religious principles from her. She was now rendered poor and calfless. Her legs were being beaten by a Shudra. There were tears in her eyes. And she was distressed and weak. She was hankering after some grass in the field. Purport. The next symptom of the age of Kali is the distressed condition of the cow. Milking the cow means drawing the principles of religion in a liquid form. The great rishis and munis would live only on milk. Srila Shukadeva Goswami would go to a householder while he was milking a cow, and he would simply take a little quantity of it for subsistence. Even 50 years ago, as of this writing, that would be probably more like 100 years ago, by the time passed. No one would deprive a sadhu of a quart or two of milk, and every householder would give milk like water. For a Sanatanist, a follower of Vedic principles, it is the duty of every householder to have cows and bulls as household paraphernalia, not only for drinking milk, but also for deriving religious principles. The Sanatanist worships cows on religious principles and respects Brahmanas. The cow's milk is required for the sacrificial fire, and by performing sacrifices, the householder can be happy. The cow's calf not only is beautiful to look at, but also gives satisfaction to the cow, and so she delivers as much milk as possible. But in the Kali Yuga, the calves are separated from the cows as early as possible for purposes which may not be mentioned in these pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. The cow stands with tears in her eyes. The Shudra milkman draws milk from the cow artificially, and when there is no milk, the cow is sent to be slaughtered. These greatly sinful acts are responsible for all the troubles in present society. People do not know what they are doing in the name of economic development. The influence of Kali will keep them in the darkness of ignorance. Despite all endeavors for peace and prosperity, they must try to see the cows and the bulls happy in all respects. Foolish people do not know how one earns happiness by making the cows and bulls happy, but it is a fact by the law of nature. Let us take it from the authority of Srimad Bhagavatam and adopt the principles for the total happiness of humanity.
Janachana Shalakaya Chakshurunhitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So this is interesting that the deities are wearing a cow outfit today.
Haribol.
Yeah, they must have planned it because I let the person who made the list out didn't look at the verses come and predict it. So it must be the deities planning this. So they're in charge of everything. So this verse is amazing. It's not just symbolic. I mean, we might read it and think, well, it symbolizes the condition of society. We have all these different thoughts in our mind. You know, we're used to being a little analytical and philosophical about things. But this is an exact description of the condition of the cow, all the cows right now, except for the Hare Krishna cows and similar. So, which very few, mostly the cows are in this predicament. So people are so ignorant that although the cow is beneficial, the cow is a beneficial animal because one can draw religious principles from her. She was now rendered poor and calfless. That's what they do. They take the calves away. It wasn't mentioned. There was slaughter was mentioned, so it could have just said slaughter, but they do veal with the calves. So they do something extra horrible torture to make the meat turn out a certain way.
Shouldn't really talk about that. I didn't realize so. And
this is what this verse is about. Excuse me. This is what this verse is about. It's about.
Mentions that this can't be spoken in these pages.
What? That veal can't be spoken?
No, but you read the slaughter.
Well, I can't read certain parts of these purports then. It said slaughter in the verse. It says slaughter in the purport.
There was a sentence there.
Can I just give class because I don't agree with you that I can't mention it at all. So
I just heard my Guru Maharaj say that the details of the slaughterhouse should be spoken in front of the deities. And it's your call what you want to do.
I'm saying this verse is describing it exactly, and this verse is right there. She is rendered poor and calfless. She's very poor. She doesn't have any niceness in her life. And she has no calf because they took the calf away to do something different with the calf to then slaughter it, which is very torturous. Her legs were being beaten by a Shudra, and they do that. It's literally true. They do it in the slaughterhouse, so people taking care of they don't know, they don't care, they're mean, they got hundreds and hundreds of cows to deal with, and they're cruel. And the cows are suffering. They're tears. The cows actually do. I've seen in pictures. They have tears in their eyes. And she was distressed and weak. And they're weak. They're maybe hungry or anything. They're just They're suffering so much. And she was hankering after some grass in the field. First I read that it seems like, okay, she's in the midst of this dramatic situation. She's got time to think about grass in the field. But yeah, that symbolizes all the peace, all the happiness, some food, some comfort inside, some comfort externally. Everything's natural. The cow's happy, so she's hankering for that, like anybody would in a concentration camp. You know, hankering after the niceness. So she was hankering. This is an exact description. It's right in the verse. She said it's an exact description of what they go through nowadays. So I wanted to point out that this is an exact description of the reality. Specifically, that's not just symbolic. So, so the next symptom is the stress condition of the cow. We're talking, first of all, Prabhupada is talking about, so milking the cow means drawing the principles of religion. So there's so many things involved here. If you're taking care of cows, it's mode of goodness. If you're drinking milk instead of eating other kinds of things, then that's mode of goodness. If you are meaning killing. So if that's mode of goodness, the milk becomes so many nice foods to be offered to Krishna. That's a principle of religion. It makes ghee, which can be used in the sacrifices and in the deity worship. That's also principles of religion. All these things come from the cow, not to mention medicines and amendments for the soil to enrich the soil. So many things come from the cow that you grow vegetables. And so it's mode of goodness and principles of religion. And nowadays, it's all concentrated in the slaughterhouse. So some of these good things, like the soil, the benefits to the soil are actually become pollution because they're too concentrated to be beneficial. And so many things are all backwards and wrong nowadays. So, and we actually grow up thinking this is normal. I mean, at least Westerners. We grow up, and well, my mother used to say, eat your meat because some poor cow had to die. And so I had some awareness. She would say that. Some poor cow. But people believe this is necessary. It's necessary. And also we're brought up in this mechanistic idea of like, we're all brought in subconsciously, similar to, I catch myself still thinking, back in the caveman days, how they do this or that. But they weren't caveman days. There was a high civilization. And it goes back to the Prajapatis. There never was a caveman day except for maybe some like lower kinds of human beings who lived in caves or something, you know, Aborigines or something. But there never was a caveman days. No such thing, except in times of distress maybe. Because there was a high culture. But I still think that, and I know better, and I still find myself thinking that in the caveman days, how they do this or that. I still think it. So it's so deeply ingrained, and I have to catch myself. So the same thing with like the mechanistic idea of the body, that consciousness comes from the nerve connections in the brain. I distinctly remember the first time the devotee caught me on that when I was brand new and I was hearing the philosophy, and I said something about, the nerves in the brain are connecting and that's a consciousness. No, that's not. It's just the material computer. Just the biological computer. It's the machine that the soul uses. The consciousness is in the soul. And the impressions of memory are in the subtle body. There might be some nerve connections too, like we might have a lot of memory stored in our computer. But that's not what real memory is. Real memory is impressions in the subtle body, and the soul has the memory. The soul has the consciousness. Even of these impressions in the subtle body, which is also material. The soul has the consciousness of it. And so we have this habit from the way we were brought up in school that it's mechanistic. And we think that of animals too. We have to not think, we're so used to think, well, it doesn't matter because they're cows. It doesn't matter because you have to eat. So they're different. You know, we have our dogs, they're different. It's mechanistic. But even we think of ourselves that way, we think of the dogs that way, we think of the cows that way, we think it's all so basic, like you think that their happiness is just that they got some food. Well, they have all kinds of feelings. The animals do. They have all the feelings that we have. They have hankering after, like, what does grass in the field mean? It means a cow can walk around in a peaceful place and go where she wants and find the grass and sit under a tree and not be bothered while she happily chews her cud and the calf is around. And she has her cow friends. So it means a lot of things, the grass in the field. It doesn't just mean she's hungry for a certain flavor. It means a lot of things that are emotional for the cow. And the cows, when the calf is taken away, they're calling and calling, and then they have tears. When they're in the slaughterhouse and they know what's going to happen to them, they have tears. I've seen pictures. They have some tears, just like we would, crying at the loss of everything, knowing it's going to be over, knowing it's going to be horrible, and there's no way of crying. And so they have these feelings. They have a feeling of fear. They have a feeling of loss of freedom. They have sadness. They have happiness and pleasure when an ox is pulling the plow or something, or dragging the log. The people have trained the ox in a loving way and given nice rewards and praise for learning as a calf, and he gets the idea, I'm doing something. And so he pulls a plow, he pulls a log, and he feels like I'm doing something. He has a happy, useful feeling. That's one of our weaknesses here, that we don't have the person, we don't have the ox trainer, so we don't have a happy engagement for the oxen. Even the calf is young. If he's a boy, he's retired to the retired part, because we don't have that. So it's not so bad because they're freedom, but they like that engagement. They like that interaction with people and the useful things, and feel proud of themselves. These are feelings that exhibit, and those who work with animals know these things, unless they're like beating them or something. There are people who work with animals that do not know, but people who work with animals in a loving way, they know these things. Just like people who have dogs, they know their dogs have feelings. They know when their dog is sad or happy and loving and all that. There are feelings of affection. I saw a video of a cow trying to protect her calf. She was valiant. She really tried. She kept pushing the humans away and running on the calf, and the calf was following her around trying to drink, and she was concentrating on protecting. She couldn't even let the calf drink. She was trying, because people were coming from all sides. Eventually they outsmarted her and got the calf. And sad. This is what happens. But the feeling is there. All animals. We saw a video of, what was it? Camel. The camel that cried. The story of the weeping camel. There's a video documentary. Somebody had gone to document the people who live in yurts in Central Asia, East Asia. And they had camels. So the camel gave birth, but the camel had such a difficult birth that she rejected her calf. It was so traumatic that she couldn't accept her calf. It was just so difficult. And so she was stuck in that, like, psychology. She couldn't accept it. And the poor calf was like, no, mama. Mama rejected me. And so they would milk the camel and give the calf milk, but they tried to figure out how to get them back together. And so they had to actually go into the city, the town, and find a musician who could play a violin and bring them out. And the lady had to sing a song, and the violin had to play, and the calf would be nearby, and it played until the tears came from the camel's eyes, and just tears flooded out. And then they brought the calf, and she accepted the calf. It was, we saw it in the video. We saw it in the documentary. The tears were flooding. And so animals have all these feelings that we have. They just don't have they don't have the brain for the self-awareness and the analytical. They don't know what it is, but they're feeling it. It's like we saw an ant and a fly on the picnic table out there once. There was an ant and a fly. There was some like spilled nectar or something. So the ant was drinking. The ant wasn't going anywhere. The ant was just there and drinking it. The fly was there and drinking, but the fly was restless because the fly had the idea that the ant had something that would be better than where the fly was drinking. So the fly kept facing. There's the ant, one place, and the fly kept coming as close as it dared, and then it just got nervous and would go away, like that. Would go away and come back. It was like envious. The ant has better nectar than I have, but I don't dare attack the ant. And the ant was saying, I've got it. I'm not budging. And we're just two insects. not even of the same species, and they were interacting in that interesting way. It was unmistakable. It felt some envy and some possessiveness. So animals are just people with little brains, that's all. They're just people too. So whatever feelings we have, they can have. And so here's the cow is so giving of milk when the cow is happy. Sometimes cows even give milk without having had a calf. If there's enough affection, sometimes it just happens that they just feel so much affection for the people who are loving them that milk starts to happen. And this has been documented lots of times. I mean, I think we had one here that did that. Yeah. So. And the products of the cow, the milk, the urine, were full of medicinal properties. The cow dung has some cleansing properties, and it makes good soil and good dried out. It's perfect fuel. All these things are part of religious life, because religious life means doing everything in the mode of goodness and for Krishna, for Vishnu. So all of this is liquid religiosity in itself, not to mention the ghee that comes from the milk. The essence of the milk is the ghee, and that is involved directly in the religious procedures. The ghee wicks on the lamp, or ghee in the fire of sacrifice. Ghee wicks on the lamp. Ghee wicks on the altar. So anyways, liquid religiosity, and the cow gives it freely. So if we have any knowledge, we have to be loving to the cow. Cows are not less than dogs. Cows are wonderful, feeling creatures that give and give. So, anyway, that's the cow. And then, even 50 years ago, now about 100 years ago, no one would deprive a sadhu of a quarter to a milk. So people would have their cows, and they'd have so much extra milk that they'd easily give to a sadhu coming by. And he'd live on this milk and live very simply. And there's a Vedic Prabhupada that says the milk makes finer brain tissues too for spiritual life, for spiritual understanding. And so the Sanatanist, meaning the Sanatan Dharma person, worships cows on religious principles, not because cow is God, but on religious principles. They worship the cow in appreciation and honor that the cow gives this religiosity. And the cow's calf not only is beautiful to look at, but also gives satisfaction to the cow, and so she delivers as much milk as possible. So if the cow is nearby, then if the calf is nearby, the cow gives more milk. And if there's that loving exchange, that the calf is there, then the cow's heart just gets warmed, and more milk is produced. And then it's a whole description of the same thing as the verse, what happens in Kali Yuga. And these are very sinful acts people don't know, and they're responsible, a direct statement, responsible for all the troubles in present society. People do not know what they are doing in the name of economic development. So we have even people who are trying to be aware of global warming and how we should be careful of our carbon footprint and not use fossil fuels so much and be more self-sustaining. That people who are promoting propaganda that we should eat less meat and that, did they say that? Wait a minute. That we should, anyway, against the factories and pollution like that. They tend to avoid, because they still want the meat, they tend to avoid admitting the great damage the cows are forced to do nowadays to the balance of the earth, because of the way the cows are bred in mass quantities and concentrated so that they pollute and taking up so much food. There's only supposed to be as many cows as you need to milk out, and that you need to work. In fact, one has to be careful if one has a Hare Krishna farm and if there's a Hare Krishna farm and one is breeding the cows and making calves in order to get milk. One does have to be careful, because it happened in the past that they were competing with this is my understanding, competing with the commercial dairies, But one thing commercial dairies do in order to make it economically feasible is they cull the herd. That means anybody who's not productive, slaughterhouse. And it means nothing to them. But the Hare Krishnas, of course, don't do that. But if you have the idea that we must produce as much milk as possible and sell it, like the commercial dairies, and cows generally have to have a calf to produce milk, then you end up with a lot of calves. Half of them are going to produce milk, and the other half are not. If you are not actually using those and training them to help do the work, then pretty soon you have too many of them. You can't breed anymore on the chance you might get more boy calves, and then the cows gradually dry up, and then you end up having to have the adopted cow program because you have a herd of dry cows and untrained oxen. So, and you just have to feed them because you can't send them to the slaughterhouse, so you have to have public donations to take care of them. So we have to be very careful about the number of breeding especially nowadays when, I guess in those days, in the time of Krishna, that they could breed freely, they could have millions of cows, and they had so much milk that they could throw yogurt at each other and walk on the ground, and it was no problem. They just had unlimited. But we have limited place where you can let them grow, let them graze, because they don't wander freely all over the county or something. Like in India, they can wander. They can go wherever and then come back home at night. And we can't allow that. We have limited pastures and limited. You can only take so much milk, and we are going to be unlimited milkmaids. The poor Jayanti can't just milk forever, and also we can have enough milk to throw yogurt on each other. So, because everybody isn't doing it. So anyways, the whole thing is limited now. So we have to be careful in the breeding program. And something I learned when I was, from ISKCON, the idea that possibly you should breed only as you need oxen to work. And some of them are going to be cows and you can get more milk, but not to breed to increase the milk, because then you have the problem of the boy calves. So we have to be very careful and not breed millions and millions of them and have them concentrated in feedlots like they do nowadays. And then the products are, instead of useful, they're pollution because they can't be processed by nature in such quantity or concentration. So we actually, now the way cows are being overbred, it's actually more than half the cause of the climate change, they say. So, anyways, all out of balance, and people don't know what they're doing, and they just want to eat their meat, and they want to drink their milk and have their ice cream and cheese and stuff, which is okay, but at the same time, in order to produce them, the modern dairy method includes a lot of slaughterhouse. So it's not really okay, and a lot of devotees who live outside are vegan, because if they don't have a cow, they don't have access to a cow, they don't really want to participate in modern dairy farming practices, so they just become vegan. And you don't have to, I guess, but I guess Prabhupada didn't say that. He said buy the milk and show people the culture. But when we have the choice, and we know sometimes devotees choose to be vegan because they don't want to participate in that. So, foolish people do not know how one earns happiness by making the cows and bulls happy, but it is a fact by the law of nature. And even we may not directly understand how by making cows and bulls happy we'll become happy. We haven't directly experienced very much of that. I mean, even here, most of us are not in contact with the cows. So this is still an abstract principle. But Prabhupada says it's true. So we need to move toward a place where we will experience the truth of this, and we will be making cows and bulls happy, and they'll interact with us, all of them will, and we'll interact with them and become peaceful by their association. etc. So I guess I'll stop here and see if there's any discussion or questions. Yes, Madhava.
My experience with cows when I was maybe 7 years old or something. We had the cows across from my street, and we got milk. So we used to drink it even warm still, because it was coming from the cow. But also, I used to go to the gates and see them, and I saw tears in their eyes.
So what?
Tears.
You saw tears in their eyes?
Yeah. And I was very little, I didn't know anything. I mean, I was growing Catholic. So I asked my mother, why are they crying? Of course, she says, no, they're not crying. But now that I'm traveling through the roads, I see cows, and sometimes they are these big, huge cows that people have from different degrees. I don't know how to say it. They are huge, big, So I stop to give them prasadam or to chant on the road, And it's amazing how afraid they are. They are afraid. I got stopped to give them prasadam, They don't come to get the prasadam. Or they hear the Mahamantra and they just look at me like, are you going to hurt us? Are you one of those, And I give them the prasadam and they run. So it's very sad how these cows have no protection. They have no idea, no knowledge that someone is out there trying to save them. It's very, very sad. Then I have a funny story. When I was a child also, this is not about cows. This is about chickens. My mother was growing chickens, and the chickens were outside. We had a big storm. And the gate of my house was closed. The gate was closed. But the front door of the house, we were covering ourselves from the storm. We were knocking on the front of the house. So my mother got a little bit scared because she thought, well, who could have gone to the gate? And now they are here, and it was only me and her, and we were alone. My father had left, so she was scared because she thought maybe a drunk in the middle of the storm trying to find shelter. What is this, And the knocking keep going, like so urgent, and please come, open the door. So finally my mother got brave and she said, okay, I'm going to open to see maybe there is an emergency. She opened the door and it was the rooster. The rooster knocking at the door because the chickens had fallen in the water tank.
Oh.
So he came to get us so we can go save the chickens. We got them all out, and then he was happy and everybody went in there.
Amazing.
So I was a little child and I was experiencing those things, which came to my mind when I became vegetarian and I became a devotee most likely. Seeing on my street the pigs being dragged with a rope, and they were crying, and I was asking my mother, why are they crying? So they knew where they were going. They knew what was going to happen to them. So all these things, Krishna had already, in my case, preparing me, So when I came in contact with Krishna consciousness, which was very late, I was almost 30 years old. So everything made sense and everything. But Krishna tries to wake us up and to show us somehow or other, so we can take it into consideration. And some kids, we mentioned the vegans, and some kids now are refusing in their homes. They are telling the parents, no more meat. No more meat for me. I don't want it. And I don't want fish either. The kids are telling their parents. And the parents want it. What are you going to eat now? Why are you doing that? So it's out there already. So we just have to keep doing what we're doing and
It can
getting
be
the word out.
Yeah, it might be these children were encountering Krishna conscious teaching in their previous life too. That they are stronger. Because in my family, my niece, when she was about 5 or 6, and she asked me why I was a vegetarian. I told her a whole bunch, all my reasons. I made a really good case. And she said, "I want to be a vegetarian." And so she went home and told her mother, and her mother said, "Well, do you like red kidney beans?" Her worst favorite bean. "You'll have to eat red kidney beans." And oh, I don't want to do that. Okay, and poof. And then she wasn't so friendly with me anymore because, this deep inside one knows when close the door, and if the child who wants to be a vegetarian is talked into eating meat anyways, a door gets closed even tighter because they know, whereas some of us, we didn't know when we were. So, I don't know when that door opens, if it ever opens again or what, but if there's a door that closes, and in the old days when people had animals, they raised their animals and killed them and ate them, they knew stuff about the animals that we don't know. We go to school and learn about animals, that they're little biological machines and that's all they are. And so we learn that, but then if you have animals around like you did, and you experience these people-like incidents, then if you close your mind to that, then it's harder, it's worse. So if you really think about it, you're really concerned about it, and I think my journey to being a vegetarian, it took a long time, but there wasn't any time where I decided, no, I want to eat meat. I didn't do that. I just, I guess I have to eat meat, like that. So I didn't really give up the idea. I just didn't feel like I was allowed or something yet. So, I saw cows. I have an uncle who was, now his cousin, now his son's doing it, a modern dairy farm. And, they call the herd and that kind of thing. This wild-eyed look that cows have when they're in that situation. As a child, I saw the cows and they were backing away from us with wild eyes, and we went to look, and there was a fence, a little railing in between where the cows were and where we were in the barn, but they were like backing away from us and looking really wild-eyed, and that made me afraid of cows because they looked scary, because they were scared. To me as a child, they looked scary, and I thought, I don't like cows. I'm scared of cows. And when I was, growing up as a Hare Krishna visiting, and I found out, I heard them, my cousins talk, and time to call, and they called, and these cows have it made. They don't have to be out in the rain. They never get to be out in the grass in the field. They're locked up. So, cooped up with each other indoors. Cows also hanker to be outside in the fresh air and see the horizon and space and not be bothered, and just like we would. And now they're just people. Animals are people, and cows are people. They just don't have the same kind of brain. But they have all the same feelings.
Prabhupada makes that example. He says that if you have a retarded brother, what do you do with him? Do you kill him?
Right.
What do you do with him? No, you take care, you protect him, you try to make the best of his life.
Yeah.
So same thing with animals. They have less intelligence. Less than the human beings, but that doesn't mean that they don't. They're still human beings.
And it doesn't mean they have no intelligence. Intelligence is the means by which the super soul communicates and guides. We say, oh, instinct, mechanistic, just instinct. Somehow they have, nobody knows what instinct is, and we're so used to it, we still say it. And because we're brought up that way. I still find, that habit is still within me, but now I know better. But it's the super soul within. And it's memory from previous lives. Animals have an instinct to take care of their young. It's not because they're like mechanically obeying some kind of mechanical instinct that's in their genes, which are just molecules. No, it's they remember. They've been mothers before. They've been fathers before. And the super soul is reminding them and guiding them a little bit by manipulating their intelligence. They have intelligence too. They have a subtle body with intelligence. It's just not as developed as ours is.
They learn systematically procedures like all the birds that fly together. that you would see how they form shapes, you know, how one is in the front and then a small flock and a bigger or whatever. All that is systematically done. It's not instinct.
But instinct is not a mystery at all. It's memory and it's super soul. So it's not a mystery.
Right here, your cat, I don't know whose cat is that, I guess the community, since I live here, they come and beg me for something. I don't know if I'm supposed to feed them or not, but I snag some milk for them, you know. And what I notice is that the mother actually comes and begs for the kid, for the kitty. So when I give them, the mother let the kitty have whatever I give. And then the mother comes back to me to beg for more, and I said, no, I gave you, and now you share. But she's actually begging for the kitty first. And then after that she said,
It's so amazing. We don't have adequate appreciation for animals. I read about chickens that have guinea hen eggs given to them. And a guinea, they eat a little different. I don't know what chickens can go and eat the feed or something, but the baby chicks do, but the guinea, but they have to scratch in the dirt for worms, and somehow the mother chicken knew and took them the way they needed. What does she know about species? But she knew somehow. So all these things, like a rooster now, humans help, emergency, come help, you know?
There's
It's
such
amazing.
a rooster.
Yeah, so it used to be exceptional. Roosters are exceptional.
about the cats, particularly, I don't like them. And I know Prabhupada said that they create envy if we have them in the house. But I also heard that example that Vivekananda Maharaj, my spiritual master, gives, that when he became a brahmachari and he saw his cat getting closer, he was like, he's going to touch my robes or whatever, you know. And Prabhupada was saying that, no, Prabhupada allowed him to get closer.
Prabhupada what?
Prabhupada allowed the cat to get closer. You know, and he chastised Vivekananda. Don't be like that, this is a human being, this is a living being also. Not a human, but a living being, you know. So you can't. And then what about the trunks? Of course, these are not animal stuff. Prabhupada in 2nd Avenue, 26, the first temple in New York, he saw these drums out there, and he sent Ramananda and all the regulars to get him, and they said, Prabhupada, but they are drunk. And Prabhupada said, it doesn't matter, the soul will listen. Bring them in. So they brought him in. They sat all in the back, they were snoozing, sleeping, and then when the class was over, Prabhupada said, okay, let them go now, the seed is planted. I mean, we can't miss that opportunity that Krishna has given us. We have a little bit of consciousness, or better consciousness than anybody, any other entity. So when we have that opportunity, like I said, I don't like cats particularly, but they come and they beg me, and I'm thinking, Krishna, they are right here. They can get a grain of rice. They can get a little bit of milk. They can, who knows? We don't know. And we have seen in India some dogs paying obeisances in front of the temple. We have seen that. So we don't know.
Yeah, I have a theory that dogs and cats were humans that acted like dogs and cats, and so that's why they always hate to look at themselves in the mirror. I don't want to see that I look like that. They still think they're humans.
They probably are because they're very fucked up. They probably were because they're very fucked up.
Yeah, but they, like a peacock or something, a bird will like to look at itself in the mirror. But dogs and cats don't. So maybe they were recently people and don't want to see what they've become. So, okay, is there anything else?
Thank you for a very humanly class.
Well, thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.